Story 1. 9 women cannot make a baby in 1 month. I use this all the time in product management when people say we can just hire some contractors. Story 2. If you've come this far, then maybe you're willing to go a little bit further. This is something I used to tell myself every day while I was on probation. Story 3. 2 things can be true at once. My therapist told me this several times, and it is so simple yet transformative for me. I spent a lot of time feeling guilty for having negative emotions toward people I loved, feeling devastated by the contradictions between what people did to me and how they treated others, or just confused by conflicting narratives from different people in my life and in the world. There is something liberating about making space for more than one truth, more than one reality. Accepting an emotion or a concept does not necessarily negate another. Story 4. People who describe themselves as brutally honest enjoy the brutality more than the honesty. When I heard this, it immediately changed the way I interacted with others. I tried to be a little kinder. Story 5. I do not know half of you as well as I would like, and I like less than half of you as well as you deserve. Story 6. Verily, the lust for comfort murders the passion of the soul, and then walks grinning at the funeral. Khalil Gibran. Story 7. For creatives, this one is by Ira Glass. Nobody tells this to people who are beginners. I wish someone had told me. All of us who do creative work get into it because we have good taste. But there is this gap. For the first couple of years, the things we create just aren't that good. They're trying to be good and have potential, but they fall short. However, your taste, the thing that got you into the game, is still strong. Your taste is also why your work disappoints you. A lot of people never get past this phase and end up quitting. Most people I know who do interesting creative work went through years of this struggle. We know our work lacks that special quality we desire. We all go through this. If you are just starting or still in this phase, you need to understand it's normal. The most important thing you can do is to produce a lot of work. Set deadlines so that every week you finish one story. It is only by going through a volume of work that you will close that gap, and your work will meet your ambitions. I took longer to figure out how to do this than anyone I've ever met. It's going to take a while. It's normal for it to take a while. You just have to push your way through. Story 8. A few days before my grandfather died, I saw him in the hospital about 6 years ago, just before my wedding. He said, "You learn in life by living it." He probably heard it somewhere, but I will never forget it. Story 9, the last time poem. One day you will carry them on your hip, then set them down, and never pick them up that way again. It absolutely affects me every time I read it. Story 10. It gets easier. Every day it gets a little easier, but you have to do it every day, that's the hard part. But it does get easier. Story 11. This quote from the Lilac People. Transgender individuals are the canaries of the world. They are the first ones removed when an environment turns poisonous. What makes it more worrisome is that you represent everything. You represent housing, job security, and access to healthcare. You represent workers' rights, voting rights, full stomachs, and freedom. Perhaps most importantly, you represent the right to body autonomy and personhood. You represent a country that does not own you or use you for the benefit of a select few at the top. If transgender individuals are under attack, then the whole country is on the brink of destruction. Story 12. There are 2 of the most important days in a person's life. The day they were born and the day they find out why. Story 13. Everything is more beautiful because we are doomed. You will never be lovelier than you are now. We will never be here again. The Iliad, Homer. Story 14. People will talk about you for the rest of your life. Why let it bother you now? Mom. Story 15. The hell where youth and laughter go. This line from Suicide in the Trenches by Siegfried Sassoon has always resonated with me since I first read the poem in 8th grade. As I age, I find the line grows in poignancy. The poem is bleak from start to finish, but the final line feels like a punch in the chest. Many of the men who fought in World War I were barely children, 17 or 18 years old. Many of them had never kissed a girl, never had a beer at the pub with their fathers, never been with a woman, and were not married or had children. They were sent en masse to the greatest slaughter Western Europe had ever known, fresh out of childhood with notions of adventure and proving themselves in combat, only to be ruthlessly and unceremoniously butchered by machine guns and artillery fired by young men just as terrified as themselves. War is hell. The First World War was a particularly special kind of impassionate, pointless hell that took place in a moonscape of mud, barbed wire, and decomposing corpses. What is the quote? I've already survived hell, and it's called Verdun. Story 16. I got two quotes from the same cartoon. Some people are built differently. We don't need to figure it out. We just have to respect it. Princess Bubblegum. Dude. Not being good at something is the first step towards being somewhat good at it. Jake the Dog. Story 17. Good people will do good things, and evil people will do evil things. However, for good people to do evil things, that requires religion. Story 18. Do not resent growing old. Many are denied the privilege. Irish proverb. My father died when I was 12. He was just about to turn 50. I first heard this quote when I was around 15, and it has always stuck with me. Story 19. We are responsible for our actions, regardless of our feelings. This idea is helpful when making my own decisions and when considering how I feel about the actions of others. Story 20. Now I know that if you wait until you think you are ready, you will wait all your life. John Flanagan, Ranger Apprentice. Story 21. The world is full of kings and queens who will blind your eyes and steal your dreams. Basically, those above you will stab you in the back at every opportunity. I should have paid more attention. Story 22. I have a collection of quotes that resonate with me. If you succeed at more than 80% of the things you do, you can afford to attempt harder challenges. If you are the smartest person in the room, seek a more intelligent environment. Here are two from my father during my childhood. Never eat anything larger than your head. If you get your head stuck, you can get it out again. Story 23. Grief is just love with no place to go. That statement struck me deeply the first time I heard it while coping with the loss of a loved one, and it is undeniably true. It truly helps you process your emotions and move forward in life without them. Story 24. The definition of grace is to make people feel comfortable around you. This change occurred when I was in my early 20s. Story 25. I am not religious, but the passage called Attitude by Chuck Swindoll ends with the quote, I am convinced that life is 10% what happens to me and 90% how I react to it. And so it is with you. We are in charge of our attitudes. Story 26. An old boss of mine who spent the first half of her life outside the United States expressed her thoughts when she heard us complaining about trivial matters. The problem with you all is that you have never had to grab your children and run for your lives. Seemed harsh, but she meant it kindly. This statement comes to mind whenever I find myself complaining about insignificant issues and helps me appreciate my calm, peaceful life. Story 27. People die at their dinner tables and in their beds. They die while using their chamber pots. Everyone dies sooner or later. Don't worry about your death. Worry about your life. Take charge of your life for as long as it lasts. Story 28. Live in a way that your presence is not noted, but your absence is felt. Seems controversial, and that is what intrigues me. It is entirely possible to be this person. Story 29. A little bit of something is better than a whole lot of nothing. As a man at a gas station once told me when I was lamenting about how little my job was paying me. I keep this in mind when I do not study for an entire hour or when I only manage to clean a portion of what I initially intended. Story 30. I am homesick for a place that no longer exists. This comment reflects a longing for childhood and the desire to relive youthful moments. Story 31. I forget the exact words, but in one episode of Scrubs, JD realizes that our parents are just people. They make mistakes and have to make decisions based on their needs, such as money and health. We place our parents on a pedestal, thinking they should be endlessly selfless and available, when in reality, they are just doing their best like the rest of us. This perspective really helped me get through my parents' divorce and the subsequent years. Story 32. You don't exist until you do. No one really pays attention to you until you exist. It's similar to how everyone recognizes and loves Spider-Man, but people walk past Peter Parkers every day. Story 33. There is something infinitely healing in the repeated refrains of nature, the assurance that dawn comes after night and spring after winter. Story 34. Live every day with intention. This quote, though from a cheesy movie, resonated with me deeply. I realized I had been coasting through life, passively watching it go by. I was feeling depressed and struggling with each day. This marked the beginning of my turning point. Story 35. It is possible to commit no mistakes and still lose. That is not a weakness. That is life. Jean-Luc Picard. Story 36. Find happiness in the small things in life, my dad said. Took me a while to understand what he meant. I realize now all the small things in life that there are to be happy about. I'm happily married. I have a home to live in. I eat regularly. My child is healthy and doing well in life. I have a vehicle to drive. I'm not in crippling debt. It makes sense now. I miss you, Dad. Story 37. The best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago. The second best time is today. Ironically, I read it on a forum about a decade ago, but it has stuck with me and served me well. Story 38. Unless someone like you cares a whole lot, nothing is going to get better. It's not. Dr. Seuss, The Lorax. Story 39. Never get less than 12 hours of sleep. Never play cards with a man who has the same first name as a city. Never get involved with a woman who has a tattoo of a dagger on her body. If you stick to that, everything else is easy. Coach Bobby Finstock. It is possible to commit no mistakes and still lose. That is not weakness. That is life. Captain Jean-Luc Picard. Change always comes long after we think it should. Captain Jean-Luc Picard. Story 40. The reasonable person adapts to the world. The unreasonable person persists in adapting the world to themselves. Therefore, all progress depends on the unreasonable person. George Bernard Shaw. Story 41. Who will remember you in 100 years? That's right, nobody. So do what you want, dress the way you desire, and don't worry about what others might think. Story 42. Jesus didn't come to this world to make evil people good. He came to this world to make dead people live. Story 43. Those who could, did. Those who couldn't, didn't. Those who did, are. Those who didn't, aren't. Definition of evolution by my professor. Story 44. In the face of such hopelessness regarding our inevitable death, it makes no sense not to at least try to achieve our wildest dreams in life. This inspired me to finally pursue medical school. I will enter the match for residency this fall. Story 45. About how evolution can explain the existence of complex and diverse organisms. Like humans, winning the lottery is hard, but if you can play as many times as you want, you will eventually win. Story 46. It's none of my business what others think of me. This changed my entire perspective on social interactions. Story 47. The same boiling water that softens the potato hardens the egg. It's about what you are made of, not the circumstances. Story 48. Check your work before you submit it. My dad always says this. It applies to every aspect of life, not just school. Checking your work means double-checking that you did something, like locking the door when you leave or sending an important email. The examiner represents the consequences, such as whether your house gets robbed or if you face issues with your boss. This habit has saved me multiple times over the years. Story 49. I doubt anyone will read this, but I want to say it anyway. A year before I had children, I asked my manager, who is a mother, what her irrational fear was. I told her mine was fire-breathing zombies that can run, and it was a lifelong intense fear. I'll never forget what she told me. She said that once you have children, you cannot afford to have fears because if you are scared of something, your children will be scared of that thing too. I think about that often after almost 10 years and 2 children. Any kind of zombie doesn't scare me like it used to. Story 50. I have 2 thoughts. You have to know where you have been to know where you are going. Attempting to execute command not found. Story 51. That's the way the ball bounces. My grandma often said this, and it was the last thing she said to me when we talked about life. Story 52. Good drivers sometimes miss their exit, but bad drivers never miss their exit. My daughter told me this the other day when I was sharing that I almost missed my exit. Story 53. I guess it doesn't have to be a positive impact. My mother told me when I was a child, friend is spelled Friend because all friendships end. Story 54. I was pregnant 14 years ago, and one of the mothers whose daughter I tutored told me that it doesn't get easier as they age. Their needs just change. That really stuck with me. Story 55. Evolution is achieved through conflict and suffering. Peace is a state of rest that, if it lasts indefinitely, leads to ignorance and mediocrity. Reflect on how humanity attained what you enjoy today. Story 56. I met a homeless man who traveled across the country by hopping trains. His destination was my neighbor's house. At one point, he said, "If you have one foot in the past and one in the future, you are missing out on the present." Story 57. Kiss and place on the ground the stone you cannot carry. This means accepting things that are simply not meant for us. Story 58. Though nothing can bring back the hour of splendor in the grass and glory in the flower, we will not grieve. Rather, we will find strength in what remains. Story 59. One must want nothing to be different, not forward, not backward, not in all eternity. One must not only bear what is necessary but also love it. Story 60. You, as much as anybody in the entire universe, deserve your love and affection. Self-love is revolutionary. Story 61. Question with boldness even the existence of a God, because if there is one, he must more approve of the homage of reason than that of blindfolded fear. Thomas Jefferson. Story 62. It is my observation that almost without exception, incompetent individuals hold positions of power. Society thrives due to luck, not effective management. W.P. Kinsella, author of Field of Dreams. Story 63. The less justified a person is in claiming excellence for themselves, the more ready they are to claim all excellence for their nation, religion, race, or holy cause. Story 64. Terry Pratchett in I Shall Wear Midnight. Evil begins when you begin to treat people as things. I see it all the time. Story 65. I dated a man who used to say, "Prior planning prevents poor performance." That phrase has stayed with me for the 20 years we have been apart. Story 66. It is possible to commit no mistakes and still lose. That is not weakness. That is life. Jean-Luc Picard. Story 67. My sister's mother-in-law told me to take life one day at a time. There are things I can and cannot control, and I need to approach them step by step. I was very stressed out with work and my current boss, and life was getting me down. This advice has stayed with me, and I do my best to follow it. Story 68. You are busy doubting yourself while so many others are intimidated by your potential. Tough times don't last, but tough people do. Story 69. This too shall pass. I have saved myself a lot of grief and stress by reminding myself that the situation is usually temporary, so I just need to get through it and move on. Story 70. If there's one thing I hate, it's losing. If there are two things I hate, they are losing and getting cancer. Story 71. When you're through changing, you're through means to me that you are constantly evolving in your life. And when you stop, you die. My wife dislikes that quote, but I don't know why. Story 72. Damned is the man who abandons himself. Those 6 words show that the worse the situation is, a man should never consider it lost. Raimundo Arruda Sobrinho. Story 73. You weren't a monster in this life, were you? Just lonely, lost, confused, and broken. Like all of us who pass this way. Maybe you were weak and foolish, but many are. So am I. Story 74. Why should I apologize for being a monster? Has anyone apologized for turning me into one? I know it's a bit irresponsible and leans toward blaming everyone but myself, but it really stuck with me. People impact us more than either they or we like to admit. Story 75. If you can hold these real imposters the same and not be swayed by them, you won't be changed. You will be a man. Story 76. There is a long list of quotes that come to mind. The best years are the first to flee. Time, the poet said, provides little more than the opportunity to look around us and die. Many others exist. Time, another observed, is not a thief but an embezzler. And most distressing of all is a French philosopher who once remarked, on the brevity of life, that we are all bearing about a corpse. These quotes are frequently repeated because they succinctly and cleverly convey important truths. Story 77. You cannot control other people. The quote is, you can bring the horse to a watering place, but the horse still needs to drink on its own. I reflect on this throughout the day whenever I feel angry about others. For example, when people drive erratically, I remind myself that I cannot change them, so there is no need to feel worried or angry. Story 78. Free to play, pay to win refers to video games with paywalls. I occasionally spend $5 on a game to change my username or buy an exclusive bundle. Many players, whether in RuneScape or Habbo Hotel, become frustrated with the real world when the virtual world requires monetary investment or vice versa. They end up spending their entire paycheck on video games week after week. I am an extremely wealthy player across multiple gaming platforms, having spent about $200 over 20 years. For the Call of Duty players, it's $20 for the diamond-coated rifle, and you still missed. Money can't buy you talent. Unless you're looking for a ghostwriter, then you can't answer questions. Story 79. If there is any kind of supreme being, I told myself, it is up to all of us to become his moral superior. Terry Pratchett. This quote comes from one of the most cynical characters Pratchett created, yet it also expresses a weirdly hopeful perspective. It serves as a good response to the usual atheist paradox concerning benevolent deities. If the world is flawed, strive to be better than it. While there are many other Pratchett quotes I could have selected, this one had the most significant impact on me. Story 80. Life is to be enjoyed, not endured. This thought made my mind explode as I realized that, up until that point, I had been in a state of survival my entire life. Story 81. If you cannot do what you want, do what you can. It is better to do a thing than to live with the fear of it. Story 82. Death is a natural part of life. Rejoice for those around you who transform into the Force. Do not mourn them. Do not miss them. It's easier said than done, but I think of this quote when I'm feeling sad about the people I've lost. It helps me remember the fun times with them instead of focusing on the sadness of their absence. Story 83. Nothing splendid has ever been achieved except by those who dared to believe that something inside them was superior to circumstance. Bruce Barton. Story 84. We must be better. Honestly, many lines from God of War, particularly from the 2018 version and Ragnarok, resonate with me. The Valhalla Kratos speech, some of the scenes with Faye, especially the last one, all connect in my mind to this idea and its variations. They are linked to my understanding of what true masculinity looks like. Story 85. If people keep telling you that you have a tail, you might want to look around and see what is wagging. Story 86. Reservoir Dogs, Mr. Blonde. The best thing you can do right now is pray for a quick death, which you aren't going to get. Story 87. I can explain it to you, but I can't understand it for you, is a phrase I use quite regularly, and I got it from a movie based on a book by the famous Dutch writer Carrie Slee. I think it was Spitched, or something similar. Story 88. We will break all the porcelain in the world to transform life. You love things too much and people too little. You love men too much in the same way you love things, and you do not love man enough. Story 89. Dante Alighieri. The darkest places in hell are reserved for those who maintain their neutrality in times of moral crisis. Story 90. More than two shakes and you're playing with it. You can get a good look at a ribeye by sticking your head up a bull's rear end, but I'd rather take the butcher's word for it. Two wrongs don't make a right, but three rights make a left. Put desire in one hand and negativity in the other and see which fills up first. That's all I heard from my mother growing up. And Jesus preached love, but he also said a bridle for the horse, a whip for the mule, and a rod across the fool's back. Story 91. The universe is shaped exactly like the Earth. If you go straight long enough, you end up where you were. If you keep moving forward, things will end. After the end, you move on. Another word for moving on is starting over. Seeing things through means you will have to start at the beginning. Now, this isn't to say don't bother. If you did what you were supposed to, and now it's over and you feel like it was a waste, it is not. This is how it's supposed to work. You aren't a failure for moving on. You're where you need to be to take the next step. Story 92. Joy multiplies when it is shared among friends, but grief diminishes with every division. R.A. Salvatore, The Dark Elf Trilogy. Story 93. Yesterday is history, tomorrow is a mystery, but today is a gift. That is why it is called the present. Story 94. A true warrior fights with purpose, not rage. Power without control leads to destruction. Control without wisdom is empty. If you wish to be strong, first be still. If you wish to be unstoppable, first learn when to move. Only then will you understand what it means to truly win. We should wait until morning. It is best if you all have a decent night's rest before I confront you. Before you face your end, I want you all to remember that I offered you preparation time. If you fail, do not blame yourself for being weak and useless. That is all wrong. Do not blame your own weakness. Direct your hatred in the right direction. Hatred is not meant to hold you back in the past. It is meant to give you strength and help you free yourself from your past. It is the power to move forward. So ignite your hatred and ascend. One day you will love yourself and become truly happy. Story 95. The law, in its majestic equality, forbids the rich as well as the poor to sleep under bridges, to beg in the streets, and to steal bread. Story 96. My dad always told me, as long as you've done your best, you've done it right. As a child, and even as an adult, I was often overwhelmed with anxiety over the smallest issues, mainly worrying that I wasn't good enough or that something would go wrong because of my actions. Exams were the biggest source of anxiety for me, but my dad always reassured me that if I had done my best, I had done it right. 20 years later, I find myself repeating this to myself regularly. Story 97. Life's greatest wounds are self-inflicted. I think Bill Clinton said this, and I have remembered it ever since. Story 98. There was some open space between what he knew and what he tried to believe, but nothing could be done about it. If you cannot fix it, you must endure it. Story 99. If you want to know who controls you, look at who you are not allowed to criticize. The history is written by the winner. Story 100. You can dive down in 6 inches of water or 6 feet. It helps keep things in perspective and not minimize either your own or other people's troubles. Story 101. I am the sum total of everything that went before me, of all I have seen and done, and of everything done to me. I am everyone and everything whose existence in the world was affected by mine. I am anything that happens after I am gone that would not have happened if I had not come. Salman Rushdie, Midnight's Children. Story 102. This too shall pass. The bad times won't last forever, so pull through them and you will be fine. The good times won't last either, so be prepared for what is coming, whatever it may be. This mindset has helped me through some dark places in my life. Story 103. You have all morning to be on time, but only 1 minute to be late. They make them in factories every day. Do not compromise on quality. Story 104. Do the best you can until you know better. Then when you know better, do better. Maya Angelou. Story 105. No matter what you have experienced, it is nothing like what someone else has, even when you experienced it together. Story 106. A man who has a conscience suffers while acknowledging his sin. That is why he is so anxious to confess it. Story 107. Those who work hard to avoid wronging others see little value in forgiveness. Story 108. It's not where you take things from, it's where you take them to. Jean-Luc Godard. It is far better to grasp the universe as it really is than to persist in delusion, no matter how satisfying or reassuring. Carl Sagan. I say these almost like a mantra, Story 109. It is better to keep one's mouth shut and appear a fool than to open it and remove all doubt. Do not let perfection get in the way of progress. Story 110. If you do not aim your arrow, you will never hit the target. This reminds me to focus on one thing at a time and to fully complete that task. Story 111. I have several thoughts that I haven't shared in this post yet. Relationships are like an emotional bank. Hopefully, you make more deposits than withdrawals. Two people can see the same situation and leave with different interpretations of what occurred. There are three types of people: those who make things happen, those who watch things happen, and those who wonder what happened. Forgive, but remember the person's name. Story 112. I have two. Sorry. Don't take criticism from someone you wouldn't take advice from. If you don't value their advice, why would you value their criticism? If it's worth doing, it's worth doing poorly. 10 minutes of tidying is better than no tidying. Answering 5 out of 20 emails is better than answering none. Story 113. Bullshit that's cute but doesn't actually mean anything. Story 114. The failure state of clever is unpleasant. John Scalzi. Do not try to be clever with people who do not know you. Be cautious when being clever with people who do know you. In fact, it is best to be straightforward and not clever. I am on the spectrum, and my sense of humor is slightly different from that of most people. Story 115. Being overweight is challenging. Maintaining good health and going to the gym is difficult. Being single is tough. Going through a divorce is hard. Choose your challenge. And commit to yourself. Story 116. I don't know why, but these thoughts come to mind. I have never forgotten them. They are spot on and so true in the right context. Here are a couple of quotes from Irish writers. Youth is wasted on the young. George Bernard Shaw. Hope triumphs over experience. Oscar Wilde. Story 117. What is best in life? To destroy your enemies, see them driven before you, and hear the lamentations of their women. People once believed that when someone dies, a crow carries their soul to the land of the dead. But sometimes, something so bad happens that a terrible sadness is carried with it, and the soul can't rest. Then, just sometimes, the crow can bring that soul back to put the wrong things right. If the people we love are stolen from us, the way to have them live on is to never stop loving them. Buildings burn, people die, but real love is forever. I have crossed oceans of time to find you. And who could forget the passage from the book of Ezekiel? I'll stop now. Story 118. Their crisis isn't my crisis. This made me realize how true this is in general. You can be experiencing the highest moment of your life while at the same time, she is going through the lowest moment of hers. Story 119. Stop whatever you are doing and ask yourself, am I afraid of death because I will not be able to do this anymore? Marcus Aurelius, Meditations. Story 120. Even if you fall flat on your face, you are still moving forward. Keep moving forward in any way that you can. You will get there. Story 121. Little and often make much. Whether for good or bad, small things add up more than you usually realize. Story 122. Everything passes, nothing remains. Understand this, loosen your grip, and find serenity. Lama Suryadas. Story 123. It's from a spoken word poem called Complainers by Rudy Francisco, and near the end it says, the human heart beats approximately 4,000 times per hour. Each pulse, each throb, each palpitation is a trophy engraved with the words, you are still alive. You are still alive. Act like it. The entire piece is truly inspiring and has kept me going on days when I absolutely wanted to quit. Story 124. Unhappy with your current situation? Change it. You are not rooted in place. While these are not the exact words, the sentiment is similar. This may not apply to everyone, as life circumstances can be complex, but it resonates with me. I can make a change and find a new path once my lease ends. Story 125. Whatever your labors and aspirations, in the noisy confusion of life, keep peace in your soul. With all its sham, drudgery, and broken dreams, it is still a beautiful world. Be cheerful. Strive to be happy. Story 126. There is nothing noble in being superior to your fellow man. True nobility is being superior to your former self. Ernest Hemingway. I first heard this while watching Kingsman, and it truly affected me. I had recently gone through a breakup and was struggling, but this quote was something I needed to hear. I was already moving in a healthier direction, but this quote gave me a significant push. I found a good career, reduced my drinking, got married, and now live a much healthier life. I often think about this quote and genuinely hope I have honored its message. And yes, I wept while watching Kingsman in the theater by myself as I felt it was what I needed. Story 127. I have two quotes. Those who do not believe in magic will never find it. And sometimes you are the miracle. Story 128. The only hole you cannot dig yourself out of is the grave. Story 129. I thought I would try a pagan friend since Christian kindness has proved to be little more than hollow courtesy. Story 130. It is possible to commit no mistakes and still lose. That is not a weakness. That is life. This realization helped me stop blaming myself for everything and taking my frustration out on myself. Story 131. Two unrelated quotes from the 1970s that I have combined. Everything you know is wrong. However, not to decide is to decide. Story 132. You can tell a lot about a person by how they treat people they do not need to treat well. Orientation, Mission Impossible 3. Story 133. Wish in one hand and the other. See which one fills up first. In other words, get busy and stop dreaming. Story 134. When I was in my 20s, I heard it from a friend who was older and more experienced in parenthood. Don't let them outnumber you. Story 135. Don't set yourself on fire to keep someone else warm, especially if all they do is complain about the smoke. Story 136. Don't take life so seriously, son. It is not permanent. Quote of the day from a college newspaper, 1993. Story 137. From my mom. It's better to be lonely and wish you were married than to be married and wish that you weren't. Story 138. But always remember this. Marines die. That is what we are here for. However, the Marine Corps lives forever, and that means you live forever. Story 139. Courage is being scared to death and saddling up anyway. I was once very scared of horses, but a few coworkers convinced me to try it. I loved it and have been riding for nearly 6 years now. I even rode in a parade and am about to go on a horse camping trip for 2 days. Story 140. My dad once told me, sometimes the person you must please tomorrow is the same person whose toes you are stepping on today. Story 141. I'm not good. I'm not nice. I'm just right. I'm the witch. You're the world. Into the Woods. My mom showed me the Peters Broadway version as a kid, and I remember her explaining, so the witch left them. Such a good show. Story 142. And though chance may choose our canvas, only we can paint the hues. But your flaws don't mean you are broken. They are just deeper shades of you. Story 143. I don't know if someone has already said it, but, and yet the time will pass anyway. I have a chronic illness that comes in episodes. When the pain is unbearable and I find myself in a frozen state of distress, I repeat this to myself like a mantra. I know it's not necessarily how it was intended in the initial context, but it helps. The pain has ended before and it can again. I may feel frozen, but time is not. It will pass anyway. Knowing there is an end to this pain because time has proven it was possible before is a relief like no other. Story 144. In the end, we will remember not the words of our enemies, but the silence of our friends. Martin Luther King. Story 145. Courage doesn't always roar. Sometimes courage is the little voice at the end of the day saying, I will try again tomorrow. Mary and Radmacher. Story 146. Remember that we are all brothers, all people, and living creatures including beasts and trees, stone, and wind. We all descend from the one great being that has always existed, before humanity lived and named it, before the first seed sprouted. Story 147. To love at all is to be vulnerable. Love anything and your heart will be wrung and possibly broken. If you want to ensure that it remains intact, you must give it to no one, not even an animal. Wrap it carefully with hobbies and little luxuries. Avoid all entanglements. Lock it up safely in the casket or coffin of your selfishness. But in that casket, safe, dark, motionless, and airless, it will change. It will not be broken. It will become unbreakable, impenetrable, and irredeemable. To love is to be vulnerable. C.S. Lewis, Story 148. The definition of insanity is doing the same thing repeatedly while expecting different results. Story 149. You don't have to see the whole staircase, just take the first step. Martin Luther King Jr. It's simple, but it resonates, especially when I'm overthinking or trying to plan every little detail before even starting. That quote reminds me to relax and just take action. Story 150. He was unable to do it, not because of its inherent difficulty, but because of its incompatibility with his nature. Leo Tolstoy, War and Peace. Story 151. We are living on this planet during its best time ever, and it makes no sense to view the future as a threat. Story 152. Nothing changes unless something changes. If you want things to change, you have to do something differently than you have been, or it won't. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.